Hey, good afternoon, everyone. And can I just welcome you to our second seminar that we run today. I'll introduce myself, and I'll talk a little bit about myself. I promise, only for a minute, I promise. I'm Chidi Okolo. I'm the Head of Education for WorldSkills London 2011. My background, I run a consultancy, an education consultancy, when I'm not doing this. And my background is essentially almost 25 years in education at secondary, further, and higher education. And latterly, as I say, I run a consultancy where I go in to schools, colleges, training providers, and advise on raising attainment, raising achievement, different strategies, different approaches. And it's partly come out of being in situations where I've had to do that, underperforming departments or departments with low attainment, low achievement, and you've been in a situation where you're forced to do that. And it got my thinking, or got me thinking about the approaches we currently use to actually raise attainment and raise achievement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategies that we used and really set the context of around our education program that we run for WorldSkills, or set up for WorldSkills 2011. I'll give you opportunities to ask questions, so please do raise your hand. It's not a formal session in that sense, but please do ask questions and I'll take questions throughout. Okay. What I want to talk about really is about applied learning strategies. What we did, and take you almost through a journey that's been, for me, almost 2 years of doing this, but stop off on the way with particular things that we did and particular nuggets of information and ideas that we brainstormed and found out as we were going along the way. So I want to look at evaluating applied learning strategies and approaches, and I want to really concentrate on our program, on the WorldSkills Education Experience program that we did. There's some of the things that in typical school or college that I'd want to talk about today. I'd like to look at some of the key components. I'd like to look at applied learning approaches and talk about producing lessons. One of the things I always, and I don't want to particularly answer this, but I just want to set this out, is that I'd like to get an idea of what we mean by applied learning. Okay, it's quite bandied about a lot. You hear, applied learning, vocational learning. It's quite used interchangeably, and I'd like to think about how we use applied learning to contribute to raising learner attainment, and that was the ethos behind what we did. Okay, these were the questions we were trying to answer. Okay. You may have seen this definition. There are many of them, and I've just taken one principally to set the scene. And it's essentially looking at, and I know I'm probably preaching to the converted, activities that engage the learner. I should pause for a little minute. I'd like to introduce the group at the back, our young colleagues at the back who are wearing yellow, bright yellow. They are students from West Thames College. And West Thames College it features prominently throughout the whole of WorldSkills 2011. Were you all at the opening ceremony yesterday? Well, those of you who were there yesterday, brilliant ceremony. All the makeup and the hair was done by students from West Thames College. But not just done as an activity, it's actually part of their program. These guys at the back here, and you'll see quite a few of them throughout the event of the next 3 days, are actually being assessed as part of their program. This is all part of an assessment. This is a live activity that they're using, and they have to conduct themselves in a particular way, and they've got a set criteria to use. So what we would try to do with WorldSkills was move away from the sort of, if you like, the conventional classroom-based activity to a much more skills-based, out-of-the-classroom experience. Certainly our directors and some of my team have probably got bored now of me saying out of the classroom. I kept saying throughout the whole of this development of our curriculum that it must be truly representative of what it is to work in the world of, in the real world. And what we did was, working with a lot of different colleges, we set up scenarios, and I'll talk a bit about them in a minute, whereby we could realize or at least present real life applications. So that was just a definition that I pulled up there. And as I say, this was the aim of our WorldSkills education program. And essentially it was to provide an enriching out of the classroom experience. So if you like, it was to take what was done in the classroom and put it into the real context. And that for me is very important. I taught at a range of colleges in London and managed departments, and I've taught at university as well. And I used to teach, my background's engineering, metallurgy, and I used to teach material science students. Conventionally in a lecture, it's like this. You'd stand up and you just talk. Now, I went to university 20 years ago, 21 years ago, whatever. That you could get away with it. The type of students that's coming through university now are not those who have formally gone through that experience. So a lot of the time, I found myself, particularly, please welcome, I found myself having to set contexts to teach whatever I was teaching. So I was teaching, you know, molecular theory or Schrodinger's equation, sorry, just going off a minute. But it wasn't just enough to stand up like I'm doing now and just rattle off Schrodinger's equation. You could see it would just go over the head. If 5% of them were listening, you're very lucky. If 10% were doodling and writing, well, you know the scenario. I'm sure a lot of you have been in that. So I was forced to be creative in the way I was delivering. I had to, because at the end of the day, they were taking an examination, okay, at the end of the module, which they had to pass, compulsory module. So it wasn't a question of saying, well, you know, they haven't made it, they'll do the reset. There had to be a strategy change. So I had to, and this is going back 10, 12 years, I had to actually come up with different strategies. And I found myself coming around to the conclusion that actually the classroom is the vehicle to process what has gone on outside the classroom. It's not the vehicle, it's not the scenario to teach, learn, assess, and do everything all in one go. It suits some type of students, but it doesn't suit all students. And that's borne out often by, in our case, by our achievement results. We can see the way it suits. And so, in coming here, bringing all this fast forward to 2011, when I was working with the teams, we had to think about ways that we could make our education experience creative. We have a challenge, and this is purely my own opinion, in this country, we have a challenge with our understanding of vocational and applied skills. We recognize that we need plumbers, engineers, electricians. We recognize that, we know that. But the processes by which we get to that, in my opinion, and I'm happy to be contradicted, is that we still have a challenge with that. And events like 2011 help us to cement that kind of link, that bridge, that gap, in my opinion. Okay, I don't think we're there yet. So moving on, we wanted something that, as I say, was out of the classroom. We wanted something that was very much student-centered. Again, I go back to our colleagues from West Thames College. They came here at 11 o'clock, half 10, or not, whatever it was, 10 o'clock. They were straight into the situation. There wasn't we literally said, this is what's got to be done. This is the problem that I need. I need you guys to solve it. And it's very interesting how the teams formed, and I just sat back, didn't do anything. I'm the client, as it were, or we're the client. Sat back, and saw them how they took control of the situation, and it became very much a student-centered learning approach. Okay, and they will make mistakes, and things will be evaluated, but we very much almost created a classroom with these young people. Okay, I'll move on. So, in developing the curriculum, these were some of the considerations. And I've talked loosely around them. Real world. 2011 was coming. We piloted some of our activities at Skills London last year, and if some of you were at Skills London last year, you may have seen we had some students who ran our skills debate. They filmed and recorded the skills debate with Theo Pafitis. So we had to be real world. It had to be out of the classroom. It had to be, and by that I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean physically out of the classroom, but it had to be sufficient that it would engage all learners here. We're talking about all learners, not an elite few or a selection, and the rest actually take whatever is left. We're actually moving the program to engage all learners. It had to have real-life applications. Often, in the old days, you had sort of simulated work experience. You had things that were all right, but they weren't really. You know, we'd send kids off to work experience, but it wasn't really what it was about, and that was actually a demotivator in some instances. So a motivated person who wanted to do vocational skills actually went out in work experience, but actually found they were sweeping the floor, or they were just doing, you know, things that just, it wasn't working. It had to take into account differences in learning styles, personal strengths, interests. It had to be reflective of the personal needs, personalized learning of the student. Okay? And above all, it had to be student-centered. We wanted something which would engage the young person as they came to the event. I'm going to talk very briefly about the overall education experience, because I think it sets the context. We had a series of components to our education experience, okay? And there you can see them all. We worked particularly around, so our context, if you like, for a young person coming was the have a go area, so they could have a go, they could try something that was very allied to the competitions. They could see what people had done, okay? They could watch and see experts at large. They could take part in activities that gave them a flavour, and this was quite key to us. We worked with awarding bodies, City and Guilds and EdExcel, around things that would say, well, if you were interested or you're motivated, you've seen an expert, you've seen a competitor, you've had a go yourself. If you are interested in plumbing or a career in electrical, you can go away, you can try this bit that a student is doing on an existing program, and you can be assessed at it. So there are assessments going out through the event as we speak, where anybody can go along, or a young person can go along with hairdressing, and they can get an idea of what it is to actually do that program. Because that was a key bit that was missing in a lot of education programs. Often, I'd get students who come on courses when I was a head of department, and they would say, they'd enroll. IT was a classic one, because I used to be head of computing and maths. They'd come along, they'd say, I want to do IT. It was almost like a default qualification. If you can't go into another course, you come onto IT. And I would say to them, you know, you've got to know, first of all, what aspect of IT, you know, do you want to do IT, you want to be an IT user, do you want to be a developer? They don't really know. After about a week, 2 weeks, you suddenly find that the student's disinterested, because it just wasn't, you know, it was more compulsion. They were made to do it. And often you ask them, well, you know, what's turned you off? It said, well, I didn't know about it before. I didn't know anything about it. So what we did here, with our experiences, what we did was we had little nuggets of tasters within the have-a-goes and within all the areas that they could try, where they could get a recognition for that little bit that they've done. Okay, and that's across the board. Okay, so that was working with the awarding bodies, City and Guilds and EdExcel. We had other aspects as well. We worked closely with schools and colleges. We developed resources which are on our website for the schools, vocationally orientated. Often they were careers-focused resources, and they're available from our website. We had something for the primary schools, One School, One Country, which those of you from here will know about, where we had the schools, we had all the delegate countries going to a particular school. And the feedback, yes, they've only done it 3 times, but the feedback generally coming back yesterday was and it was very interesting, because I saw a lot of the team leaders last night at the opening ceremony. They said the kids were very inspired. you know, they said, had a lovely time. They started, yeah, great time, great. But the kids were really inspired. That word kept coming up yesterday, inspired. And that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to get people who were in it to inspire others, young people to inspire others. And it kept buzzing through my head yesterday, this word of inspiring. So we feel that we can partially tick a box in that sense. And that One School, One Country was linked to the Junior WorldSkills, and that's, you've probably seen so many little kids running around, and it was a follow-up to that, so that the primary schools could meet the delegates or see them at their place of work again today. Okay, and as I said, there were the three main components were our work with schools and colleges, our work with awarding bodies and sponsors. We have, as well as students who are doing filming, we have students who are doing heavy engineering, welding, who are being assessed at the same time. Okay, so they're mirroring what is going on in the competitions, and we've got quite a few of them throughout as an example. Okay, all of these students are doing, and the emphasis I'm making about them being here is that they've done something in college, and they're actually doing the practical elements of it here, and they're taking it back. And they're being partially assessed here, and they're taking it back to their respective college. Okay. And the context of all of this was WorldSkills 2011, the event. Okay. With our schools and colleges, the aim was to provide locally delivered enriching education. And we were trying to get young people to understand, we were trying to do two things really. We were trying to get young people to understand about vocational skills, but we were more importantly trying to get teachers to embed vocational skills in their delivery. So it doesn't matter what subject it was, what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, well, this is a context, okay? How do you take that context and apply it into whatever you're delivering? I always say, I had a really good conversation with one of the sponsors from Mitutoyo at a sponsorship meeting a few months ago. I was doing a presentation like this, and I said, there are two questions that we need to answer for our students in the class. When a student says, I don't understand, help me. And when a student says, I understand, how do I apply this? And they're for me, two very, very different questions. And the relationship you build, the way we respond and the way we answer them and address those questions, I don't understand, help me. I do understand, how do I apply this? The way we answer those questions determines, in my view, again, my opinion, the interests and the motivation of the student in that particular area. And I found this out, again, having taught mathematics, physics, courses that are taught in, I always call them quite conventional ways. Chalk and talk, often, and again, not being too harsh, often not necessarily delivered in the most inspiring way. And students would say, I don't understand. And I've got to go into a different mode, different mechanism, because it's no point applying the same medicine if it's not working. You've got to change the mode. And that actually means coming out of a comfort zone and actually trying a different technique. So one of the things we were trying to do with our resources and our relationships with the schools was to try and get them to start looking at an applied approach to delivering. So, and again, it didn't matter what the subject, if you're teaching Ohm's law, well, typically, and when I did Ohm's law at school, teacher would come on, put it on board, V is equal to IR on the board, and then say, right, we're going to do a practical, and that's it. And you could do it. What we tried to do was we tried to use WorldSkills 2011 as the context. So we'd said, this is where Ohm's law would be applied. So if you come to WorldSkills 2011 and you go to the MBDA stand, for example, okay, where they're showing you how to make a circuit board, you cannot make a circuit board without understanding what the potential is, what the current is, and what the resistance is. And the reason why I talk about this is my own experience of delivering, and I deliver to often kids that are not necessarily academically strong, in the what I call, because everybody's strong, everybody in education is strong, it's the emphasis. And where I would have to use different techniques other than what I call the conventional techniques. And again, what we found was that where teachers were beginning to take this approach, we ran a planning day for the One School, One Country where we use this context. Teachers were coming back and saying, actually, our students were sufficiently more motivated in terms of responding to what the questions we were asking them. So again, we tried to it was ambitious, and we're by no means there, but it was a way of trying to getting through our resources an applied approach. Okay? And they were just the sort of packages, and a classic example was we delivered, we had a medal design competition, which school kids could go into, but the actual resource that we developed was around your approaches to developing the medal. So it wasn't actually anything to do with about the medal at all. It was actually, well, we got you to think about what processes are you, the designer, taking, and what are the considerations, what things do you need to consider in delivering and producing a medal. So it's very much an applied approach to doing it. And we had, again, very, very positive feedback from the schools around and the colleges around that. I've talked about One School, One Country. That was an engagement of primarily primary schools, but again, we started developing resources, and we had a training day for teachers around this idea. In this context, it was more about citizenship and about understanding different cultures, but again, it was the approach. Not so much the subject, really, it was so much the approach we took. This idea of taking a context and actually building a story, a learning story around a particular context. In this case, it was about delegates, people from another country, visiting a school, visiting your school, basically. I've talked a little bit about our awarding bodies, and they were great. And awarding bodies were great to get on side in terms of helping us to formally recognize learning that's taking place. As I say, we've got the students here who will complete a series of activities. These guys are doing filming. There are others right across the board. And that is actually being formally recognized. So they will use that evidence. I should say, one of the things, and I'll talk about the legacy at the end of what we're doing for the legacy, but one of the things that we have anecdotally, we haven't got confirmed news on that, is that all the students who were involved in practical activities with us last year at Skills London, when they looked at their results, their final year results, there were second year students who were finishing, going on to university across academic and vocational courses. They found that, and this is purely anecdotal, so we haven't got the confirmed results, they found that there was quite a significant improvement in year between their results. Of course, it's not necessarily attributable to us. I mean, it's not as scientific as that. But what they've generally found was that after coming to Skills London, which is the smaller version of this, the results went up. The levels of attainment went up. Because one of the things that events such as 2011 and Skills London and other practical events do is they provide a scenario where all of those skills that you need, you have to put into the melting pot. They've got to be strong communicators. They've got to be strong problem solvers. They've got to be strong team workers and group leaders. I mean, all of these guys are taking different roles and assuming different leadership roles throughout. So it's almost like we've got the classroom environment here, and it's just how we use it. So I'm working with the awarding bodies, as I say, the students who are on current courses, and they're working through a series of practical activities which are linked directly to their curriculum. At the event, we supported a lot of what was going on, is being supported by quite robust information, advice and guidance. Because obviously, if we're going down a contextualized route, we need to be able to provide the information that is that motivates them and moves them on, as well as being able to give access to the competitions. One of the things that we wanted to do was, and that's why we've encouraged young people to attend, is to see the world's best working. Just to see them working. I went to do quite a few presentations in colleges, and I said, just go and see people working in their area. Don't make any comment, don't make any, just see them. And a lot of them who came to Skills London, who are here now, said they were so inspired by seeing the quality, the standard, and actually what it did was it motivated the learners to think, well, actually, I could be that, because that's the other bit of this. In terms of the attainment, it's actually saying, well, I could be that, I could be sitting there. And a lot of students I've spoken to said, you know, how do I enter the competitions? How do I get there? You know, and we take them through this sort of this long journey of how to get there. So the competitions plus the showcases plus the information and advice and guidance, almost, if you like, brings the whole of this out of the classroom experience to the melting pot. Okay. These were the areas, as I said, that we focused on. So at the event, we had the WorldSkills competitions, the Have a Goes, the IAG, and the showcasing. And when the students go back to college, what we're encouraging is the reflective element of this. Okay? And by that, one of the things that, because again, one of the things that I found teaching students for many years is that their levels of reflection, to take a back seat, stop, look at a scenario and say, well, okay, how could I change it? How would I do that? In fact, it used to be really interesting because when you set assignments, I put a reflective element. You get a big assignment, you get 2 lines at the end saying, you know, if I had to do this again, I would just change task 1, which shows that, you know, they focus on the process but not actually the bit of reflection. Which, as you know, is a difficult animal. At the best, it's talking about yourself, and it's taking you to new spheres. But what we're trying to encourage here is to be reflective of what they've seen, what they've done, and to use that as the next step for learning, and to move them on. Okay, this funny-looking model really summarizes the whole of the education experience. And what I've done is I've really broken it up into 3 areas, essentially focusing around the 3 main, if you like, ways of learning styles. So we've got our visual elements, which is looking at the showcases, looking at the competitions, looking at the skills masterclasses. We've got the hearing, the listening, advice and guidance, talking to experts, skills experts. Part of what we're trying to do, again, with our filming is to get vox pops from each of the experts around their skill areas so that we have a permanent record of those. And you've got the kinesthetic, you've got the doing, the hands-on, the have a goes, the trying particular skills, completing activities, a record of successes. All of those sort of things are our hands-on approach to doing it. The reason why I've put this on here is that typically in a good class you would do this. What we're saying is that what we're trying to encourage is to take this and take it outside the conventional classroom and really be much more creative. And I'm just giving you an example of the ways we've done it. If I was in a college situation, it would be different. But the principles are the same, in my view. Using a much more of an applied approach, a much more practical, hands-on approach to actually elicit underpinning theory, okay, an understanding of underpinning theory. So what do we consider to be the benefits, and you know, why would we want to take this approach? Well, we felt that the learners and visitors were provided with an out-of-the-classroom experience of what goes on in the real world. And that's very important, and again for me, particularly when I'm teaching or when I was teaching, because it's very easy just to set a context that somebody can get a handle on. And as I said, they're facilitating learning in context. So we've got, as I say, we've got students working, doing different right across the board, but of which is linked to their learning. Okay, so they're applying what they've learned. Okay, or they're taking their application and it's consolidating their learning. It's working both ways. The scenarios that we put all our students in, or the students working with us, is designed to develop their powers of inquiry. We want them to find out at 2011 what it's like to be a hairdresser, a plumber, an electrical engineer. You know, we want that inquiry. We want that levels of analysis. We want them to be able to look at this is not as good as that. We have a competition with a welding competition where we're getting the visitors to judge welding artifacts. So if you go to some of the welding stands, the students have done produced their welding artifacts, and the visitors will make a judgment. This is not as good as that, and there'll be people on hand to encourage the analysis and ask questions. Why do you think that's not as good as that? And we're trying to encourage reflection. Okay, now that you've been in and experienced it and you've seen it and you've solved whatever problem, or you've attempted to solve whatever problem you have, how did it make you feel? What was how did you feel? How has it motivated you? What were your challenges? All of those sorts of questions, trying to get the young person to think beyond the pale, as I call it, so that they're going away and thinking, right, actually, yeah, that was a challenge, but actually, it is something that I could do, and if I really focused my mind on it and found out more information, I could pursue that. And as I say, anecdotally, we're waiting for information to come through. We do know of improvements in attainment and results for students involved in the program or allied or activities allied to the program. So what we're going to do beyond it. One of my key favorite words is impact, because again, as a head, I'd always used to say, teachers would come to me and say, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm thinking of doing this particular lesson or this strategy. I'd say, fine, what's the impact? What impact is it going to have on the learner? And one of the things we want to do post-2011 is to take everything we've done and evaluate its impact, both in terms of moving the learner on to the next stage, both in terms of evaluating attainments and assessments, but also in the degree of motivation. And we want to look at those three particular things there. We want to look at increasing the ability to describe specific processes to address a specific problem. One of the key things that I always felt, and again, teaching technical problems, one of the things I'd always used to say to students was, formulate the problem. I've given you the problem. Okay, that's what it is. Take that problem and break it down. And I'd show students how to break a problem down. So it's A, manageable chunks, and B, it's in a way that they understand the problem to be. Okay. So we want to look at how good the program was at enabling students to describe specific processes to address a specific problem. We want to look at the impact in terms of preparing students to be flexible learners and to take different approaches to solving a problem or addressing an issue. And we want to really look at the depth and breadth of solutions to a given problem. Are they really, is it just surface learning? Are they really taking what they've obtained in the context, and are they really applying it? And is it really working? And as I say, with our students and our cohorts that are working, and we've got quite a few students from different colleges working across the board, and we're going to have a sort of mini research on questionnaires. They're the three things that specifically we're trying to look at, and we're trying to see as a measure of the degree of success. That's about as much as I'd want to say on the education experience. Are there any sort of questions or things that spring to mind that you'd want to know a bit more about? Yes.
So in
Hello.
terms of success,
yes.
Can you give us some examples of where success has actually been achieved, in the schooling system?
Are you talking about in terms of performance success? Yeah. We had students who came from last. I can't talk about last year because we're just doing it right now. But when we were students at Skills London, we had about 18 students working specifically at the event. So they were given a task that was linked directly to the curriculum. If touch wood, every one of them, I think bar one, their results went up, but more importantly, they all progressed to their next appropriate level. Some went into the world of work, some went into university from it. So we're waiting for the final confirmation of results. But from the colleges that were involved, anecdotally, we were told that, because obviously it's confidential, they can't release the result at the time. We were told that they noticed a significant improvement in things like the communication skills, particularly. Because obviously, if you're out here and you're interviewing somebody, you've got to have appropriate communication skills, and they felt that the writing skills, the reflective skills improved. We're hoping to have a much more, and I don't have the figures, but we'll have much more. But this was coming from the school heads themselves, the college heads. Okay. Yes.
In that post-assessment, did the schools in that possibly turn around and say they were surprised that people who they might have thought were quite weak in the classroom have actually shone in a real-life situation?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. What we tried to do, I had no influence on this, but I said that we wanted a cross-representation of people. We weren't selecting students to take part. We wanted a true representation of your class, so much so that what they actually did was they just brought a class of students of mixed ability. What they found a number of things. They found that the students who they might consider to have been much more reserved, quiet, timid, who didn't take part in activities generally in class, were much more forward, even to the point that they were now taking group leader responsibilities. And I kind of noticed that actually on day one. Day one, they'd come in, they wouldn't really ask the questions, but by day 4 or 5, you can't stop them. And they noticed that actually the quality of their work, the quality of their analysis, and the questioning, and their confidence. We forget all those things. We tend to talk in academic terms all the time, but the confidence and the ability to talk and challenge and all of that, they found they went up quite significantly amongst the cohort that they might not have thought were strong enough. Okay. Yes.
What I found is that in my experience in South Africa, young children, very young children, early grades, are given a lot of applied experience.
Yes.
How to bake, and they really do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we seem to lose the plot until they become young adults almost.
Yes.
And what I'm seeing here is that you've said, hold on, let's not go all that far. Let's bring it back and start the applied learning before they're ever in a work
Absolutely. Yeah.
At what age would you think this is ideal? Because there's some very young children here, and I'm very impressed that it's not just seniors.
Personally, I think that as early as possible. We have the children from here are from 7 to 11, from the beginning of school. So much so that this is purely my personal view, that I don't see the distinction. In this country, and I think it'd be very much the same in South Africa, we make this distinction between academic learning and applied learning. Well, having taught both, to me, they're one and the same. Learning is learning. I see applied learning as learning for purpose, as opposed to learning because I'm interested. That's the distinction. So for me, the earlier the child can start understanding what it's like to be a plumber, pick a hammer up, pick a chisel up, plait a hair, whatever. Not in my case, of course. The better it is. And what I found is that where you've got that element embedded, for some reason, and I've got no explanation, the children seem to be quite more motivated. And it doesn't matter how. I've taught a lot of kids who often are deemed to be disruptive, deemed to be challenging, words that I don't really understand in the context of education, because a child is there to be taught. If a child is disruptive, it's because I'm not teaching in a way that communicates effectively with that child. But what I found was if you change the style of delivery and you made it a lot much more applied, you're taking contexts that they understand, and you're bringing that learning. You found, first of all, disruptive levels go down, interest levels go up, and actually academic ability goes up. We used to have, again, with this academic vocational issue, we often had students who, at 16, they didn't necessarily have strong GCSEs, but they wanted to go to university, because university here is still seen as the, well, there's a big issue now about because of fees, but it's still seen as the top. So we just say, okay, fine, no problem. We'd put them on a vocational qualification, work them really hard for 2 years. So they do a level 3 program. They'd go and work them really, really hard so they get in the top grades. And then we'd put them on an A-level program for 1 year. And what we found was that the grades, so we imagine in the same department, we'd had A-levels, people doing straight A-levels for 2 years, and we have our vocational students doing their BTEC for 2 years and then doing an A-level intensive for 1 year. We found that their results were significantly different, significantly better. Now, of course, they've got an extra year, but we found that their approach to learning was different, that their levels of understanding were better, and that their general motivation was better. And these were kids who came, if you took their GCSEs, they came in with a lower level of attainment. But they ended up, and yes, I do qualify that they've done an extra year, but actually they were much well prepared. And what we found at university, because I have quite a lot of links with the universities, we found that the students we took, the university would come back and say they were better prepared, or even the students would come back and say we were better prepared. We would sit in a room and be looking, and they'd be thinking we've done this already. So going over to the initial question, I think as early as possible, and I would urge those who, of us who have got that influence to start this approach. I mean, I'm not saying this is the approach, but it's something that we've found that works, and I've certainly been using it over quite many years of taking a context, learning in context, and taking it and applying it to other situations. Is that okay? Any other questions? The slides will be on our available from the WorldSkills website if you need to get this. Yes, you can ask. Sorry.
I'm here from Pakistan.
Hi.
We've recently set up a vocational training institute.
Right.
Yet to graduate our first class.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about learning,
Yes.
learning, whether it's technical or it's
Yeah.
academic.
Mm-hmm.
In a country like Pakistan, where we're trying to put together the education system,
Into what?
revamp it,
Yeah.
the notion of leapfrogging
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to build for better.
Yeah.
Go through our minds as the upside of the downside.
Mm-hmm.
Being the downside, right? So when I'm thinking of this as a magic wand, how would we set out designing, secondary schooling for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
with there being no real distinction between vocational and that just being yet another stream? Almost, I mean, I guess the German model or the Swiss models are somewhat like that.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
in cultures like Germany,
Yeah.
working with your hands is considered a good
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in perhaps the English-speaking world,
Yes.
it's kind of looked down upon. So how do we?
Well, I think my personal view is I think the easiest way of doing it is actually your teachers. It's the approach to teaching. I think, rightly or wrongly, we by and large stuck to this. We seem to be wedded to this academic vocational divide. In my view, it's going to take a long time before people, and it's going to take WorldSkills type events when they become more regular, more frequent, and all of that. But that could be a generation away before we actually suddenly realize that the German model. I mean, my brother used to work in Germany, for example, and he used to say that as soon as the first thing that a plumber does or electrician does when they get to the door, they go like this, because that is actually their corgi or whatever equivalent. Because if they're not vocationally oriented, you're not going to take them. So no degree level thing is going to help you. You just wouldn't let them through the door. It's exactly that sort of thing. And to get to that type of model, I think you need to start with the teachers. And the approach we've tried to do working with our teachers is to try and motivate them to move, to try a different approach to learning, to teaching and learning. Embedding an applied format or applied techniques in the lessons themselves. I think I know what you're saying. What is there a structural magic one? And I think it starts the other way around in my view. I think if we can motivate teachers, and that's why we encourage a lot of teachers to come here to see the events, to see the activities that are going on, to see how they can take those and use those. I think that's the starting point. In this country, we've had many, literally every change of government, there's always a change of some form of education or something or other. Something new comes in. But actually, fundamentally, nobody actually sits and says, well, actually, let's look at what from the teacher's perspective and say, actually, let's spend some time looking at the strategies that teachers are using. Take the best bits of what they do, add other bits to it, and then move on. So I would focus very much on the teacher training programs, because they're going to deliver, and looking at the applied approach, the applied techniques, embedding it into existing programs you have. Is that okay? Anything else? I'm conscious of... yes?
Just to kind of build on that, what's interesting, I agree. Well, I come from Canada.
Yeah.
And again, it's looked down upon in trades and technology skills. So when you say the teachers, and I'm glad you added the training of the teachers.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you come out of our high school program and want to go into a university program to be a teacher, you know, it can be a 4, 5, 6 year program.
Yeah.
And then go out to be a teacher. Then all they've known is the educational side.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the whole challenge is, and I don't blame them. I don't, because if that's all you know, then it's really hard to inspire children to say, pick up the hammer,
Yes.
show the chisel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the disconnect.
Yeah.
That all of us, I think, in the global situation, have to find a way to make it okay through the teacher's eyes.
Yes.
That the hammer's okay or the slide rule's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. Definitely agree with that.
In fact, just to add on to that thought, is the fact that when you look at salaries or incomes, what is being better paid? What is your market? What is your, the real world, so to speak, attaching greater value to? So how hard is that perspective? How difficult is it to break that perspective within the market? Somebody who's got an actuarial degree or has got something else is going to be paid potentially.
Well, I think there was a point a few years ago when we had a scarcity of plumbers. We get kids coming to our colleges saying, "I want to be a plumber." Why? Because we get £70,000 a year. They don't get £70,000, but there was a big trend because there was a serious. It must have been about late 90s. There was a scarcity of plumbers and specialist mechanical automotive engineers. But I think one of the things we've got to do is, I do agree with you, we've got to change the way the status of things. It's quite, but that's a media thing as well, because often the media, engineering was viewed as dead. I came from an engineering background. When I left university, I went into R&D, into Courtaulds, and it wasn't a dirty job. There are moments when it was, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? And it's very much viewed as oil rags and cloth caps and things like that. And I think there's got to be an image change, not an artificial image change, but I think also that, and again, taking both your points, taking your point. One of the reasons why I went down a sort of applied learning approach was that I had confidence to talk for my engineering day. So I would talk to my students, and I said, this when I was in industry, we did this. So I'd almost start a lesson by telling a story, and the students would sit there and they'd ask me these questions about engineering, and then I'd actually go into what I want to talk to them about. And I think it's having that confidence, and my worry is that you're right. You're getting people who are fast-tracked through a teaching program, but actually have never had a real sense. If you graduate at 21, 22, whatever it is, 23, you go and do you could do a degree for 4 years in education, or you could do a degree in a subject and then do a 1 year postgrad, and then 9 months later or 6 months later you're in a classroom. Well, you've never experienced the world of work. So that means you can only be limited by what you've been taught and what you've been told. So I do think we need to have some sort. I mean, I had just purely again one of my things. I had to think that you should have at least 2 years vocational experience before you're a teacher, in whatever subject it is. Yes.
I just want to follow up with that
Yeah.
comment and the one from your Canadian
Mhm.
colleague. I've been in the media for 30 years.
Mhm.
I've been in Africa focusing on skills development
Mhm.
for the last 12 years.
Mhm.
The problem is the same disjunct exists between the media
Mhm.
and the world of work
Mhm.
and vocational as does between teachers
Mhm.
and vocational, because the reporters are essentially academic type people.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
And they don't understand.
How has that been? But then how's that been addressed? How did, is it, it isn't? Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. I come from FE,
Mhm.
and you're talking about schools, and I see it as two different things. If you're at a school, then surely it's your role to make sure that they're employable. Okay? What they're employable in is something that they're going to learn and decide later on. Okay? But when they come to us in FE, it's for us who have already got our skills. Even if you're in media, you can then do a very quick teaching qualification to turn that into your skill,
Mhm.
to be able to then pass your knowledge on to your learners. Okay, so then here in this country, that's how we would then do it. If we've got plumbers or hairdressers or mechanics or media, media, we have people that have come from the workplace who
Mhm.
then teach
Yeah.
our 16-year-olds or 14-year-olds and inspire them. So they are actually, if you were in front of me teaching me how to cut hair, but you've never worked in a salon, I wouldn't have any confidence in you. And however, if you, when I was 10 years old, are teaching me how to get these valuable skills that I will need in later life to get a job, to be able to communicate, to be able to be a team player, to have numeracy, literacy skills, those sort of skills, that's surely there's two different roles for different ages.
Well, let's open it up.
In
Is it?
Australia, the education have to keep current as well. Say you're teaching hairdressing in Australia, you have to at least have 5 weeks hairdressing yourself currently. You start teaching for a year and 5 weeks hairdressing your currently in Australia.
Mhm.
Exactly the same thing. You've got, now I've got a teaching degree, I can now teach in anything that I'm qualified in. So
Mhm.
if I then decided tomorrow to do a motor mechanics qualification, I then can teach that.
Mhm.
Okay? I may not have any industry experience.
without ever working in industry?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is
To
that.
assess it, it's like
Yeah, you
to
have.
assess it, then you have to have that industry experience.
Yeah.
And that again, that's a bit of a grey area because they'll say some
Mm.
governing bodies will say 2 years, some will say 6 months. But yeah, generally, if you want to teach it, whatever you're qualified in, you are able to teach. You're not able to assess, but you're able to teach.
And it depends on the workplace. Some colleges, if I was interviewing you and you wanted to become, if you were going to go into iMedia, then I'd want to know what your background was in that area. Yes, you've got your qualification. And if you haven't got your teaching qualification, I'll sponsor you to get
To do that. Yeah. Yeah.
alongside you teaching these students.
Mhm.
That
But.
goes back to what you were saying about employability skills. It's actually the schools
Mhm.
aren't embedded basic communication.
Yeah.
They haven't got the skills to work with full hairdressers or wherever you
Mm.
go. They haven't got that basic bit in the first place.
Yeah.
You can quite easily teach them wherever the skill area
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But without all that bit, you're stuck straight out.
Absolutely.
Not to degrade or anything, but what's happening is that we're valuing the education of sitting in a university classroom greater than the experience of actually living.
Mhm.
And that's the
Mhm.
dilemma,
Yeah.
that's the fight.
Yeah.
Because the pay scale is, if I have a whole bunch of letters behind my name, I will get more
Mhm.
than if I have 25 years experience
Yeah.
of actually doing what I'm going to teach.
Yeah.
And that is a huge, I don't know how to fix that, but I'm sure.
That rule starts to change because you might be able to sit in front of me with these qualifications, but if you can't actually communicate with me,
Absolutely.
then I won't give you a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's
But can I ask, sorry, can I just ask you a question? Don't you find that worrying? That because I've sat in meetings about particularly functional skills, and I worked a lot with the Hackney boroughs, for example, and we were saying, well, hang on, this is getting worrying. That thank you. This is getting worrying. That or would you, or do you see that as a? I know it's an integral part of the role, but do you think there's more emphasis on now having to prepare, to start from preparing beforehand, before you actually get into the subject itself, or you know?
Numeracy skills, then we have to address that first. So that could take another year to get them into, have a basic knowledge before we then start our course.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's not ideal.
No. Well, you have to. Yeah.
We have 20 in our class.
Mm-hmm.
In a school, you may have 32.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
With different needs and different abilities.
Yeah. 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 I'll just leave you with one point. Well, when I was talking to one of our, we work with Cisco very closely, and one of the they had Cisco's first apprentice was doing. I was working with him very closely, and they were telling me. Well, I was having a conversation one day with them, and they said that when he finishes his apprenticeship, the day he finishes, he'll graduate apprenticeship wise the same time as a graduate. Immediately the day he graduates, he will be 3 years in terms of experience more than the graduate. So you've got somebody with a BSc. I was shocked. Somebody with a BSc and somebody with an apprenticeship in Cisco will be 3 years ahead of experience. So of course, he's salaried and all of that. So we're coming up with this point about the status, and I don't know how to address this issue of status, but it pleasantly shocked me that going through that vocational route can jump you so much, but you don't get that. You just get this thing that if you have a degree or you've got A levels or whatever, you're going to jump up naturally. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
We have a popular one in South Africa, and it's quite good. You're talking about the shortage of plumbers. On a Saturday night, when your hot water cylinder bursts,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to pay more for a plumber than to get a doctor to come and visit you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other thing is that a lot of people, I think, and you know this one as well, is with vocational training, I think this is the whole thing about this inspiration and motivation,
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people with the vocational skill, a good one, especially the guys who come here.
Yeah.
I mean, the motivation for them is one day they can start their own businesses. They're
Yes.
if you can carry on with some sort of entrepreneurial follow-up.
Absolutely, absolutely.
These are guys who are going to, the top ones are guys who are going to create jobs.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Their leadership gives them.
Yeah, and the talent.
Mm.
We lose sight of the fact, I think the point over here is very true, that at the end of the day, you get qualifications to get a job.
Mm.
And the fact is, we're finding around the world now that a lot of people with degrees at universities are not getting jobs.
Yes,
And there's a change now
yes,
to vocational.
yeah,
And I take some issue with, it's going to take generations to change the esteem and status
Mm.
of vocational, because that's very important.
Mm.
And I think it's actually in the hands of the education authorities to change that.
absolutely. I agree.
How they promote vocational education.
Yes,
And for example, in New Zealand and I know in Australia as well, we're starting to have proper awards ceremonies, graduation ceremonies for certificates
great.
and vocational education, and put them on the same pedestal.
Absolutely.
Position which universities are.
That's great.
Can change it forward.
That's,
Can I just make a comment on your applied learning? A lot of the applied learning you talked about was around, the experience of WorldSkills.
yes, I use that as a context.
Finding for
Yeah.
applied learning experience is actually the more mundane stuff, like
Mm.
turning up on time every day.
Absolutely, yeah,
Every week, every month, every year.
absolutely.
And like learning to interface with others in the working environment.
Yes, yeah,
Not just having
with the job.
experiencing the whole work environment.
Yeah,
Very important.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I should have mentioned that in the presentation. What a key part of it was, I mean, they were concentrated over a week. They were with us for Skills London. They'll be with us for a week this week. But it is that, exactly that. It is turning up at time, being at the right place at the right time, presenting yourself well, coming with the right attitude. You know, the technical skills in some respects are almost secondary to all those other things that get you to doing that in the first place. If you can't communicate effectively, as I was saying earlier, if you can't turn up on time, if your attitude, your way you're expressing yourself isn't, you can't do you're not doing the job, no matter how good you are at fiddling with the camera. You know.
Well, it's like some of the young people that we're going to talk to, the business people today.
Mm-hmm.
One of them said, well, I want to ask, why do you get a bed?
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Mm.
It's like, you know, if you're motivated.
Yes.
And to learn that at a very young age, that being on time and being gung-ho
Mm-hmm.
goes so much farther that a good company will take an individual and they'll do the training.
Yeah.
They'll do whatever.
Yeah.
Because if they see the attitude. Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
So one of the things that we're trying to keep as a strategy for this new vocational training institute is we describe it as soft skills.
mm-hmm.
Right? So the whole pitch is that you take these young men and women and you teach them city and guilds, curriculum stuff. But if they can't communicate, if they don't have the confidence to actually look at you and speak, and of course the schooling system gives you a lot of other deficiencies in terms of fluency and expression.
Mm-hmm.
But the soft skill pitch is, life skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we just said really well that the institute will teach you what you don't know, but
Mm.
the attitude that you bring in
Is the
is
key.
something that they don't have the wherewithal to tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in New Zealand, the industry has insisted we actually embed the soft skills in our qualifications. So it's actually in most of our qualifications.
So it's a quantifiable,
Measurable.
measurable.
Sorry.
At WorldSkills last year, we were discussing the whole changing perceptions of VT and vocational training.
Mm-hmm.
And a very important point was raised in that perhaps we're also not marketing properly because we haven't necessarily identified our target market correctly. Because perhaps we should also be targeting not the kids who are here,
Mm.
but their parents.
Absolutely.
Because how many parents say, Plumber, they're wonderful things.
Yes.
We need them, but my son's going to university.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
So
Yes.
the parents, I think, are the people that we have to win in the short term as well.
Yes. Yeah. Guys, I'm conscious of time, and I could debate education for we could be. Thank you. Is there anything else? Any other questions, points? I hope to see you during the week, and I'm happily debated education. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the rest of the conference and the competitions. Take care.